I've made my divorce filing." With such startling words, "A poor wife is worthless after all," my husband said. He married his sweetheart and filed for divorce while I was abroad on business. In addition, he said, "You married me for my money, right? You married me for my wealth?" accusing me of doing so. "Hand over all claims to the assets." Like I married him just to get his money. My husband started to fall apart when I confronted him. Ever since our marriage, he had looked down on me and treated me badly. In the end, he reached the lowest point. "I'm Julia, and I'm 35 years old. My mother has been raising my sister and myself by herself since my father passed away when I was in kindergarten. Though I was appreciative of my mother, I had a secret desire to have a father. Though I didn't necessarily desire a new father, I did hope to have a happy, fulfilling life with my spouse and many kids. Life on just my mother's earnings was far from luxurious, though I had no idea how many we'd have. But as a family of 3, we were content. But even after I began working and making a respectable living, I never truly recovered from the poverty I had grown up in. I used to buy groceries mostly at bargain stores even when I was single, stocking up on things that wouldn't spoil during deals. I wouldn't even buy bento from the convenience store for meals on their own, so eating out was out of the question. I would carry tea in a thermos for refreshments. Saving money had quickly turned into a pastime of mine. Daniel and I got married 4 years ago. We got along well after meeting through a mutual friend. Daniel was affluent from an early age, in contrast to me, who was raised in poverty, and we had very different ideas and attitudes about money. But I was lured to the new world he showed me and his kindness. Soon after we first met, we began dating, and since I was ready to get married and above 30, we were married in less than a year. My flat was convenient for both of our jobs, so we made the decision to move in together. The rent was extremely low because the apartment was subsidized by the firm, which is one of the reasons we decided to move in there after getting married. Daniel helped with other living expenditures, so I kept up with the rent. This was the start of our married life. Daniel held rather conventional ideas about gender roles, thinking that after marriage, women should give up their jobs and take care of the family, while men should provide for them financially. I thought these viewpoints were great and manly at the time. He said he would support me if I become a housewife before we were married. I was happy then, and I think he saw me as a home woman who could cook and clean well. I did, however, enjoy my work and had significant duties there. Although I didn't like doing housework, I wasn't going to be a stay-at-home mom full-time. Since our flat was sponsored by the firm, we would have to move if I resigned my job and became a stay-at-home mom. Our rent and moving expenses would go up dramatically if we moved to an apartment that was similar. To be honest, Daniel didn't make a lot of money. Our requirements for money would grow if we had kids, so I would have to continue working. Taking into account our circumstances, I made the decision to make as much money as I could while I could, and since I was covering the rent, I felt compelled to keep making money. I quietly brought up these issues, along with the necessity of leaving the flat, with my husband Daniel. I think this was the first time I had ever disagreed with him. "Hey, about you wanting me to be a housewife," I replied. "I'll take care of the house, but may I work till our children are born? Right now, I want us to save as much money as possible." "Huh. Are you saying my salary is insufficient? Or do you just want more money to spend?" "It isn't the case. I want to save money because having kids is expensive. I can even pay our living bills with the money I make. Having more money is always preferable, right?" "All right, you make $115,000 a year? Just enough to cover the rent. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. It's preferable to kicking back at home." "All right, but don't be lazy in the housework." "Yeah, $115,000. However, I'm grateful. I'll work till our children are born. Naturally, I'll also take care of the house." Even though there were several portions I didn't feel comfortable with, I persuaded him to let me continue. However, looking back, This could have irritated him. Work and housework took more time to balance than I had anticipated. I had a really hectic schedule. I didn't work part-time. I was employed full-time. I got up early to cook breakfast, pack lunches for the two of us, prepare some dinner, and clean the house. After Daniel went to bed, I cooked dinner, warmed up the bath, and did laundry when I got home. Since we hardly had any time together as a pair, I started to question whether this was truly how a marriage was supposed to work. Daniel, on the other hand, behaved like a conventional spouse and did nothing at home. He must have noticed how preoccupied I was with housework, because all he did when he got home was eat supper, drink beer, and unwind. When it was ready, he would have a solo bath and retire to his room. Considering how hard I was working, I wished he would lend a hand a little, but I was afraid to speak up for fear that he would urge me to simply quit my job. I foolishly thought that after we had children, he would start to help more around the house. But we had become more and more estranged from one another, so having children seemed unlikely. I chose to speak with Daniel about it. "Hey, we should start thinking about considering kids, right?" "Ahem, young ones? Considering your exhaustion from work and housework, you're surprisingly energetic." "That is not the issue. I'd like to start a family." "Our marriage isn't that old. Isn't it premature for children?" "Perhaps for you, but I'm already past 30. The time a woman has to become a mother is limited. As I age, becoming pregnant is becoming more difficult. It's practically too late. So we are done having children. You'll expect me to assist if we have one. Am I right? You are aware of my workload. I refuse to assist in raising children." "What? It's weird to say you won't assist in raising a child before they are even born, don't you think? Even though I'm going to be raising children by myself, shouldn't you at least intend to assist? It's also your child. Parenting is what you do. I will not assist with the children at all because I work to support the family. You'll just whine and say that I'm not helping, that you're doing it all by yourself, and that makes me the villain. You must have been raised on a diet of plenty of children and poverty from birth. We don't need kids, and we're not impoverished. The discussion is over." Daniel cut the talk short and left for his room. I was crying so hard in the living room by myself. Not only was my desire for kids denied, but my upbringing was also disparaged. Our relationship quickly deteriorated after this episode, and we seldom spoke at all. There were no kids and very little interaction. Perhaps it was time to think about getting a divorce, but I kept thinking about my sweet spouse from before, and I wished we could be the happy couple we once were. I've been juggling work and housework nonstop since then. I was so busy with several things. I eventually took on a big project at work, which meant traveling for work more often and being away from Daniel for longer periods. I warned him about an impending work trip one day as usual, but this time he responded differently than before. "I'm leaving tomorrow for a roughly 10-day business trip. Please be careful." "And another journey? Your efforts are usually intense. You must be exhausted, but take care." Rather than being his typical ridiculing self, he was surprisingly polite. Even so, he grinned and continued, "When you get back, you're in for a big surprise." I was done with him. I was going to make my own decision. But his smile made me doubt my commitment. It was almost our wedding anniversary, and I wondered whether he had something special planned. I hoped that he might have had a change of heart despite everything. If he had really changed, I would have even thought twice before taking my position. But a significant event dashed my fading hope. The first thing that surprised me when I got home 10 days later was that the front door wouldn't open. As I battled to get the key to work, Daniel spoke from within. "Are you surprised, Julia? The first surprise is this. You can no longer use your key since I changed the locks." "What are you trying to say? Why is my key not working? Open the door." "Why would I open my home to a stranger? I replaced the locks. Just so you know, we got divorced." The second surprise is that a destitute spouse is of no use. Divorce. I never did sign any documents. How on earth were you able to accomplish this? I've just faked your autograph. I turned it in using the witness name of a buddy. You're no longer a known person. Do you get it? All right, now you understand? Then we need to discuss property division, right? Okay, property separation. I need you to sign this document. Give up the power to divide your possessions. What? I never gave property partition a second thought. I hadn't given divorce a thought. You'll also give up the right to divide your property, is that correct? How much property do you suppose someone in your situation has? At most, a few thousand in savings? That's not necessary for me. I own more possessions. Therefore, if someone is going to divide the money, it would be me handing it to you rather than the other way around. Are you not understanding? Is that accurate? All right, that's irrelevant. Let's make the agreement public and alter it to reflect a mutual abandonment of property rights. I shot back. Daniel decided to make the document public after editing it again on his computer. But before we could turn it in, there would be some delay. I decided to gather my belongings and temporarily vacate the residence. He disdained me till the very end as I was leaving. You're poor. While you were traveling, I considered discarding your possessions. But you didn't have much and wore the same clothing all the time, which is a sign of poverty. I had a plan, which is why I had very few possessions at the time. The only thing that caught me off guard was Daniel secretly changing the locks. As was to be expected, a terrified Daniel contacted a few days later. Julia, what have you done? What are you trying to say? I haven't taken any action. Why are you being so frantic? I have numerous inquiries. I was first instructed to empty the apartment. Oh, so you continue to reside there? That is not permitted. The month has changed and you are invading. Violating the law? However, it's my home. How are you doing? Did you forget that I was renting an apartment from a company? You can't live there any longer, of course, since I was the lessee. That is absurd. How are you able to accomplish this? I'm in shock at you. Did I not tell you that a rental flat cannot simply have its locks changed? I own the house, so if I want to, I can change the locks. Did you fail to pay attention? It was the flat I rented. The owner is the apartment management, even if you were the one with the lease. Without telling them, you are unable to replace the locks. Is that accurate? While you were changing the locks, I also ended the lease. I had permission to reside there up until this month. I had intended to come back, but you may have committed criminal damage because you changed someone else's property without permission. But why did you end it so quickly? Malicious harm? Is it the reason the police are currently at the front door? I can't bring myself to open it. Thus, the police did show up. It's probably not for criminal damage or trespassing, so don't worry. I should speak with them instead, he said. What makes me aware of the police? Because I filed a report against you for filing for divorce on your own. It appears that you have engaged in criminal activity related to forgery and unauthorized use of a private document. One individual may submit divorce documents, but only with the consent of both parties and with their own signatures. It is evident that this is illegal because Daniel falsified both the witness and my signature. I kept pushing harder. So, the divorce papers you submitted are unreliable, and your marriage with Susan can't happen either. How are you aware of Susan? Did you really believe I was ignorant? I hired a private investigator to look into your relationship with Susan in great detail. At work, things were hectic, and liaising with the agency was difficult. Furthermore, you conducted a lavish wedding ceremony while I was purportedly away on business. How are you doing? It was a lie? Your business travel? Yes. Even though I was busy, I took a leave of absence from work to prepare documents and conduct some research. I was aware that you had returned Susan home. This was the kind of evidence that could not have been gathered while working. Following my complete disclosure, Even over the phone, Daniel appeared quite depressed and was unable to express himself. And he begged me, "Please don't tell Susan that I'm divorced." Why would I do that? No such fact exists to report. Are you serious? I'm grateful. Do you have a misunderstanding? When was your divorce finalized? Remember that bogus divorce decree is void? Thus, you and I are still married, legally speaking. What? Given that you, my spouse, committed adultery, legally speaking, Susan must make restitution. I sent her the demand for reparations via rapid delivery yesterday. I take it that she was unaware of your marriage? Then, at this time, I am unable to retract the assertion. Even though I knew Susan thought Daniel was unmarried, I nonetheless submitted the demand for reparations on purpose. Perhaps Susan hasn't gotten the letter because she hasn't gotten in touch with me yet. It ought to show up shortly. When you have to deal with the cops, should I be on the phone with you as well? You have a lot on your plate. I refuse to listen to the cops. No one will arrest me. Before Susan or her family can receive the letter, I'm heading to her house right now to get it. Then he hung up. He most likely walked straight to Susan's house to stand by the front door and wait for the postman. Since the letter was sent as registered mail to Susan alone, I knew it would be in vain. He couldn't get it even if he waited for the postman. Daniel called me a few hours later, looking dejected. When the postman arrived, he said there had been an incident. Finally, I'll take that envelope. Who are you? You do not reside here, correct? Since I'm married, I live here basically. I'm entitled to receive my letters. As you can see, I'm unable to offer you this envelope. The mail is registered to Susan alone. What? Please give it to me. Certainly not. If you're really that keen, get Susan's okay. What's going on here? Ah, Daniel, why is there so much noise? What's taking place? Ah, Susan, you have registered mail. This dude would not take it. I apologize for the inconvenience. I'll be heading out now. What is this? A call for restitution? Daniel, you were wed? What's happening here? I apologize, but she was formerly married to someone else. I was ashamed to announce my divorce. I apologize for keeping things under wraps. However, isn't it odd? We just started dating, and already there's a demand for payment? There shouldn't be any issues if you were divorced prior to our dating relationship, right? My ex-wife is insane, all right. Perhaps she's requesting compensation because I got married out of resentment. That was his justification. However, it was soon shown to be a lie. I wrote a letter and included my contact details in the envelope, so Susan gave me a call. I informed her during that call about the infidelity, the null and void divorce, and their nuptials while he was still my husband. They'd had a ceremony, but they still hadn't filed the marriage registration. It was still pending since Daniel wanted to submit it on a nice couple's day. He most likely put off filing for marriage registration since he wasn't sure if the divorce was finalized. Daniel ran from Susan's house when he was exposed and contacted me again without hesitation. I needed to tell Daniel something crucial after our meeting at the adjacent cafe. Daniel began talking first as soon as I got there. Julia, kindly remove your demand for reparations. Assume for the moment that we are now formally divorced after a protracted separation. I might perhaps cover it up and apologize to Susan for my covert divorce. Do you really believe I'm begging to stay in your marriage? I was going to get a divorce otherwise, but you have to pay back the money you cheated on me. I guess you're just trying to get money out of me. Normal for the underprivileged. You really do have a weak heart. You're speaking gibberish. Everything can vary based on my response. We still have the choice not to get divorced. You can't refuse if I say no, which means you can't marry Susan and your marital status will be made public. All right, I'll cover the damages. Divorce me right away. Please sign here. What about property division? How much more are you hoping to get out of me? Reparation ought to be sufficient. Recall that we decided not to divide the property, correct? So let's formalize it now. All right. You're not as horrible as I believed. I'm grateful. After creating a public document for property division and reparations with a public notary, we headed to City Hall to file the divorce paperwork and complete our divorce. Feeling relieved, I said my goodbyes to Daniel. Glad we don't have to divide property. What are you saying? It's something that helps me. Do you still possess any assets after giving me my money back, by the way? Susan is going to demand damages as well. She said there will be a fee for the wedding. That isn't feasible. Susan and I are getting married. She is not able to say that. Now that we're divorced, there shouldn't be any issues. You continue to exist in a fiction. You cheated on your spouse. While you were still married, you got married. Do you think Susan still has faith in you? Fraud in marriage? That is absurd. Susan is going to believe me. Feel that if you so choose. Susan told me straight. Did the guests at your wedding not receive payment for their roles? You still owe them money? You were aware of that? I still haven't paid them. Why is it important to you? You would have been better off if you had just accepted property division. That is what I intended to convey to you. Even if we had divided property, you would have benefited more. What topic are you discussing? The poor woman. You only make $15,000 a year, and your family is impoverished, correct? Even a raise would only amount to about $20,000. You possess no property. I figured you might be wrong because you constantly calling me poor. Yes, I do make $15,000 a year. But you are aware that I am employed for a foreign corporation, right? I became a director of the American branch, but it doesn't appear like you're interested in me. Instead of $115,000 a year, it is $155,000 monthly. That indicates a $1.86 million yearly income. $180,000 a year. $180,000? That is not possible. Obviously, I've been saving that money for the future since I haven't had the opportunity to spend that much. There is still a sizable amount of funds from before our marriage, but they are not included in the property division. As a result, I might have divided the property to obtain half of it. After all, you were my destiny. I'll have the divorce documents updated. How are you doing? If you have that much money, you think I'd gladly undo the divorce after all that hatred? I explained to Daniel that the reparations claim was non-negotiable after our conversation at the cafe. You mean you don't have to ask for compensation? It's not much for you at all. Whoever laughs at 1 cent will cry over 1 cent. I'm making this payment to make up for the mental pain you gave me. Sincerely, I'd like to make additional claims. Now that it's official, please make sure you pay it, even if you have to do it in payments. I will have no money at all. Don't return to the flat either. By now, your stuff ought to have been transported to your parents' place. You may have assumed I didn't have many possessions, but that was before I relocated. For the most part, they were. Were you really that uninterested in me? I have to return to my parents' place since I can't have so little. They are ignorant at this point, are they not? Allow me to clarify. Refrain from speaking. I've filled them in on everything already. We should be transparent about our reasons for divorce. Oh, and your father told me not to cross our threshold ever again, so I'm stuck here. I left the cafe as Daniel looked to crumble beneath the weight of it all. I later learned that, in spite of my advice, he got into difficulties at the police station. Returning to the flat, he sat in the vacant room aimlessly until the manager phoned the police, at which point he was hauled away. Following Daniel's apprehension and the ensuing legal actions, his parents accepted accountability and endeavored to mend fences. They expressed their regret to Susan's family and paid off all debts associated with the wedding. I expected Susan's family to file a lawsuit for marriage fraud, but they chose not to. I didn't waver in my resolve to sue Daniel for falsifying the divorce documents, though. He made a settlement offer, but I decided to press the lawsuit nevertheless. For me, it wasn't about the money. It was about Daniel having to deal with the fallout and realizing how serious his actions were. I was able to handle the legal process without it being too heavy with the help of my attorney. Daniel was eventually fired as a result of his behavior at work being revealed. Due to his inability to obtain a steady job, he was forced to work long hours at a relative's construction company, where his father used the majority of his pay to settle his obligations. It was evident that Daniel's parents, more stringent than I had thought, had gone to considerable lengths to guarantee he reimbursed Susan for her damages as well as my reimbursement. This was a turning point in Daniel's life, where he had to face the results of his decisions and how they affected other people. I had been through so much and had learned to be resilient, but relocating overseas after my divorce was finalized gave me a much-needed sense of freedom. I found comfort in a new friendship in the head office of my company with a foreign executive. They felt supported and understood, especially as they looked forward to the birth of their first child together. My own experiences have taught me the importance of open communication and the need to make tough decisions in troubled marriages. I came to see that suffering in quiet wasn't always a virtue, and that, in certain cases, getting a divorce was the only way to find personal fulfillment and happiness. I welcomed a fresh sense of calm and confidence, with my spouse by my side and plans for co-parenting. I was pleased to have the chance to create the joyful family I had always imagined as she got ready for maternity leave and anticipated their impending marriage. My experience demonstrated the value of bravery in facing unpleasant realities and coming to decisions that promote happiness and personal development.